Bradley, discussing what he was seeing on the floor there, and he's going to do that with us too, joining us now from somewhere on the road. I don't know where exactly he's going, but I do know this. I screwed it up earlier. He's in Central Time, and we're in Eastern Time. But we've got that correct, and we've got Pat here following Carolina's 17-point win. Hey, man, thanks so much. How are you?
I'm good. How you fellas doing? Can you hear me? Am I coming through clear?
You are. Yeah, you're coming through as clear as you were on the network last night. So far, so that's good. That's good.
Good deal. Good deal. Well, glad to be with you fellas. Mike Morgan speaks highly of you.
Well, I appreciate that. And Mike's a dear friend and the reason I'm even in this industry. So from back when he was calling Gamecock basketball years and years ago. So I'm glad he.
Are you calling him old? Are you calling him old?
Well, older than me. He's not. Let's see. I'm 38, so he's not that much older than I am.
Oh, he's ageless, and let me tell you, he just recently got married, and that gave him a pep in his step like I hadn't seen in years.
So we were down there. We were just down in Florida for our. JC's not with us right now. He's off the air. But Mike and I were just down there, and that was the first chance I had to meet Summer. And yeah, you're right. He got younger all of a sudden.
Yes.
After meeting Summer,
he got slimmer. He got younger. He got better looking. As long as she's standing next to him, he is definitely better looking. There is no doubt about that.
well, Pat, that's how it works for all of us guys out here.
Yeah,
that's right.
For our image, yeah.
That's right. Well, look, man, I know that we're on borrowed time with you here because are you calling a game tonight? Is that why you're on the road?
No, not tonight. I actually, I'm going to be at Mississippi State Auburn this weekend, but so I get a couple. I'm in Little Rock now, and then going to Boston later, and then picking up a couple of things, and then heading out to Starkville Friday morning.
So you're traveling up and down the East Coast. Well, thoughts with you as you get up to snow country and back, and hopefully no delays. So last night I was watching. I want to make sure I was texting with you this morning. I said this. I heartedly mean it. I want to make sure we say it in front of our audience. You're one of the great voices in college basketball. Really appreciate how you cover the game, Pat. It means a lot.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Absolutely. It's very enjoyable, and really appreciate it when you're on the call via color or in the studio. We always learn something, and that's it's wonderful stuff. And last night listening to you after the game, I knew instantly I'd love to have you on today if we could get you. Carolina, I mentioned this earlier, and I'm a very uneducated basketball guy compared to somebody like yourself. So I want to say this and then get your thoughts on the comment. South Carolina beat Kentucky last night with their brand of basketball. That was my takeaway. How would you see that?
Yeah, and I said in the broadcast last night, I think the word for the Gamecocks season, and actually since Coach Lamont Paris got there, has been patience. He was patient last year. He knew what he needed to bring in. Their offense is very patient. Their defense is patient. They can get down in a defensive stance for 30 seconds, defensive rebound. And they're going to be patient. They have been patient getting to the top 25. But I think the combination of how patient they are offensively took the air out of the basketball against Kentucky, who likes to get up and down. And think about this. Kentucky averages 75 possessions per game, right? That's why they're the number one scoring team and all that. Last night, they had 59 possessions.
Wow.
So the pace was certainly South Carolina's, but there's a lot to do with that. If you take good shots, even if you miss them, your defense is still in position to get back in transition. And so there was so many good things, but like I said, this team is an older team. They're a really good decision-making team. Don't turn it over a lot, so they're going to get good looks at it each time down the floor, make or miss. And same thing on the defensive side. They make good decisions, very few mistakes. And last night, it was all five guys. They busted their tail. They were physical and got on the glass and rebounded. And I think actually ultimately out-rebounded Kentucky. So it was, South Carolina for sure was their pace and their style.
So in the last two games combined, they went to Fayetteville and took down the Hogs, and then they turn around and come back home, and of course they upset the Wildcats. They scored 29 field goals last night, and then over there in Bud Walton, they knocked down 28. Both numbers, 29 and 28, were assisted 20 times. So that's 40 assists in the last two games. How would you describe that?
That is a team where if you're going to have a high assist team, you have to have great timing and spacing. Because if you see other teams where their timing's off, their spacing is off, then it's forcing guys to have to make one-on-one moves and one-on-one decisions. And, that's when you get into bad shots because there's just not a lot of great one-on-one basketball plays in college basketball. So I think it goes back to, the kind of players you bring in. And it's guys that make good decisions with the basketball. They don't force things. They allow the offense to run. And listen, I don't care who, X is like, if you run a play the right way, it's going to work. It's just the problem is too many guys are impatient and they don't wait for the second option or the third option. Or if, the first option is taken away, they break off the play and do it themselves. These guys don't. And that goes back to the kind of players that Coach Paris recruited. He said specifically, I want to bring in, we talked to him. I did a lot of games last year, talked to him SEC Media Day, and he's like, we just weren't a good decision-making team last year. We turned it over too much. And that's decision-making is offense and defense. So I think when you talk about assists, you're able to do that with great spacing and timing, and that's just knowing how to play the game and execute on the half-court offense.
Pat Bradley joining us here from the SEC Network. All right, so.
And the other thing I'll add to that, is what's great about this team is they wait for the mismatch. They wait for their advantage. So it could be B.J. Mack. Obviously, he had a great game against Arkansas. They knew exactly what matchup they wanted, took advantage of it. Could be Murray Boyles, Michi Johnson, Talon Cooper obviously had a great game last night. So I think that's the smart IQ part of this team is they run their offense enough to get the matchup they want, and that's the highest percentage opportunity you're going to get on offense.
It's fascinating to hear you talk about it because this is like I felt like last year at times in Coach Parrish's first year that I was a little unsure of what they were trying to do. And again, Pat, I think a lot of that really goes back to the fact that they didn't have the player. Like some coaches, they come in and what do? They immediately adjust whatever system they were going to run to run it with the talent they've got. Of course, they had G.G. Jackson last year, very talented kid, as we all know. And then some guys come in with a system, and then they're going to sign the kids that they need to play in that system. So like when I see this brand of basketball, you essentially everybody on the floor can kind of step out at times and pop one from long range and things like that. Like Lamont's style of basketball, like do you see the influence that in how he coaches compared to where he's coached? Like with Bo Ryan and things like that. Like how would you describe this?
Yeah, coming in, it's Bo Ryan and those guys had a very free-flowing offense. They're great passing teams. If you go back to some of those teams, they were amongst the best passing teams in college basketball. And it's because there's constant movement, player movement to create opening. There's not a lot of standing still. When you stand still, it's easy for the defense to guard you. And I think that's where the influence came. And he talked about that. He wanted at times to have a 5-out offense and, player movement, ball movement, get the defense moving side to side. And he's able to do that. I think, last year, first year is always difficult. You're dealing, with new faces trying to get transfers. And G.G. Jackson, you almost felt like, he was such a talented player, a local kid. So, you have to allow G.G. Jackson to see what he can do, right? And, I think at times maybe he wasn't ready to be that, that dominant offensive force. I mean, the kid was 17 years old. There's not many people who can do that. So, but I think this year, they were able to bring in the type of player that they want. And it's great to watch because there's, it doesn't have to be a superstar. And you're talking about Coach Bo Ryan's team. It doesn't have to be a super. It's great when you get one that adds to it. But if you can have 5 guys, and I think this is what he took from him too, 5 guys who are a threat on the offensive end. I mean, that's what it's all about. You can't focus on one guy, right? I mean, you just can't. You stop him, okay, well, Murray Boyles, then if you focus on Michi, well, Murray Boyles will take you down into the block or attack. So it's a combination of bringing in those new guys, and also I think a guy like Jacoby Wright, he's improved.
Yeah.
Zach Davis has improved. So it's all those things, man. I'm just happy for those guys because it was patience, and Coach Paris had patience with everybody, and I'm glad to see that it's paying off for him and the team.
As I was watching the game last night, no disrespect to Tom and Dane, but I was listening to Derek Scott and Casey Manning coinciding.
The judge.
That's exactly right. I was listening to those guys, and Derek. I mean, Pat, you've seen everything there is to see in the SEC from a basketball standpoint. You're one of the best players ever play in the league. Talon Cooper, Derek calls him the old man. Kind of like your dad. If you grow up playing basketball against your dad, you can't ever beat him, and you're like, hey, I'm faster than you, I'm taller than you, I'm smarter than you, I'm quicker, I'm this, that, and the other. But yet your dad beats you every time you go out there to play a game of pickup. Who does Talon remind you of anybody? How would you describe and explain his game?
Yeah, well, I mean that's a good way to put it. But he's again, I go back to the word patient. Like, he's under control. You can't rush him. You can't get him out of, you can't get him hectic or chaotic. And from a point guard, I think he's about 6'4", right? So he's a good sized guard. So usually the matchup for him, he can put an opposing defender on his hip. He can see over him, so he can kind of keep his dribble and see what's material, what is materializing on the offensive end. And he's the great thing about him is he's only put up 20 last night. He could score, but he's old.
Did we lose him?
Oh, are you there, Pat? We may have lost you.
That was strange.
Yeah.
But it looked like he just went mute, unmute.
Yeah.
Well, that was me.
Did I break up? Sorry about that.
There you are. Yeah.
You're back.
Yeah.
I think Talon is just fine getting 10 assists, 5 points, no turnovers. Then he is getting 20, and I think that's the whole team is like that. They feel that.
To expand this a little bit, and I know Matt wants to get a question here too. We won't keep you much longer, as I know you're on the road.
Sorry, fellas, you there?
Yeah, we can hear you.
We got you, Pat.
All right, sorry about that.
No, you're good. To expand this conversation a little bit farther, let's get I want to get some big picture things with you before we let you run here. I kind of felt like Carolina needed a signature win. Pat, I didn't know if it would come last night or not, but there's a lot of folks who were trying to figure out who these guys were going to be. Can you hear us, Pat?
Yeah, you there, Pat?
Can you disconnect him maybe and try to reconnect him, Phil?
It'd be like a Bluetooth thing.
Guys? Oh, here.
Yeah,
We got you again.
Yeah,
we're back.
The win last night for South Carolina, I felt like they needed a signature win. What do you think that win did for them in the eyes of committee members, national basketball analysts, things like that?
Well, I think it showed that, obviously that they can compete with anybody. And, one of the cool things is, after that game, you hear a lot of, people from the Kentucky side saying, oh, that's what we were afraid of, come March, a team that can slow you down. And I think, if you're a committee member, let's say NCAA tournament committee member, and you want to put somebody in a position to have a bracket buster, I think they're going to be more than that. South Carolina, they're legit, but they've proven that they can slow down with their style of play one of the top offenses in the country. So, I mean, I'm thinking to myself, like, if you're a committee member, that's South Carolina is gonna be one heck of a team in the side of a bracket to disrupt any style, right? Because they can be physical. They can slow you down. They can shoot it. They can do a bunch of different things. So, they've got they've got something that they do well. And I think could cause a lot of problems in an NCAA tournament game when you're talking about a one and done, right? I mean, we've seen it so many times where when you see these teams make runs, a lot of times it's because they can take the air out of the basketball, make good decisions, keep it close, and then win at the end of the game. So I think from a committee standpoint, they're drooling over a team like South Carolina that nobody's really talking about, but their style of play, they can slow anybody down.
Are they a top 25 team in your mind? And do you think they'll be in there if they beat Missouri this weekend? They got to play. Hey, Pat.
Yeah.
They've only played 6 games, right? They still have to keep playing basketball. This was one win.
Right.
If they beat Missouri at home this weekend, a team they already took down in Columbia, Mizzou, earlier in the season, do you think they'll be in there? And do you think that they are a top 25 team?
I do. I really do. And Missouri's a team that is going to want to get up and down the floor. They want to play at a high pace. So it may be, a little bit similar to what they did against Kentucky, but Missouri's a lot smaller team. They're a pretty good shooting team, but it's going to be the same thing. And I look at how South Carolina wins. They don't have to make a bunch of shots to beat you, right? Because they rely on defense, taking care of the basketball. That's always going to give you a chance. You don't have to score a lot of points. Now, there are nights when everybody's going to feel it and you put up 80, 85. Mm-hmm. But then there are nights you're going to have to win, 62-60. Can you win those games? And I think South Carolina has shown that they can win those games. So that's why I feel like they get a shot, in just about every one of these games.
Matt, go ahead and squeeze one in here before we let him run, man.
Yeah, Pat, we appreciate it. I appreciate your time today for sure. So you were at Arkansas back when the Gamecocks kind of had their glory run with B.J. Mackey, Melvin Watson, Larry Davis, won the SEC championship. Before you run, can you kind of give us your take on what the Gamecocks were like back then?
Yeah, it was fun. I think they were undefeated. One of what was that, 97? I think they went to the SEC conference. I believe it was undefeated with those guys.
15-1. 15-1.
Yeah, 15-1. Yeah,
yep.
BJ and Melvin and those guys. I do remember my freshman year. It was the SEC tournament quarterfinals, and both us and South Carolina, who had a young team, we had a young team too. We were starting 4 freshmen, and those the guys were young, and we beat them in the SEC tournament quarterfinals in New Orleans, and that determined who got into the NCAA tournament that year. And then, so we built up a really good rivalry, I think, because, BJ and Melvin and in particular were, my class. Kareem Reed was my teammate, Derek Hood. So we kind of all 4 years were able to compete against each other. I'll never forget. I don't know if I'll forgive BJ Mackey though. He elbowed me right in the lip. He split my lip in 97, my sophomore year in Columbia. He didn't even apologize. I think he did it on purpose. BJ, if you're listening, I'm waiting for that apology, buddy.
I'll make sure BJ hears that. I'll make sure BJ hears it.
Yeah,
he was a great player. He's a great, but remind him, I know how great of a player he was too. He was one of the, obviously you can just look at those years. He was first team all SEC amongst the best in the SEC, legend.
Absolutely, guys. And we think we got a pretty good shooter here at South Carolina with Michi Johnson, but Pat here hit 60 consecutive threes for Arkansas and set an Arkansas record. So Pat, we hope the Gamecocks keep
consecutive games. 60 consecutive games.
Yeah, 60 in a row would be pretty good, Pat. I probably did that in practice a few times.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
It's 366 in his career. Well, if you're willing to, we'll touch base a little bit later on in the season. We'd love to get you back in and maybe on a day where we can spend some more time with you and get your thoughts overall on the rest of the league and things like that. Certainly wanted to give the Gamecocks their due after the victory last night, but it's still a long ways to go before we get to the SEC tournament and into March. So we'd love to get you back if you'd be willing at some point.
Absolutely, fellas. Just give me a call. Appreciate you.
Yep. Hey, safe travels. Thanks for all you do for basketball, and we'll see you soon.